The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me for today. This is our last class this week of Envisioneer Education Training Week. Today, we're going to cover working drawings. We're going to take the model on my screen and transfer it into floor plans, elevation sections, details, and some alternative views as well, so that you can fully document the plan and understand how to do that efficiently. If at any time during today's class you have any questions, in your GoToMeeting console on the right-hand side, you can raise your hand and that will indicate me that someone has a question, and then type your question out in GoToMeeting and I'll be able to read it. I'm going to keep everyone on mute just so we don't have any audio disturbances during the class. You have two options for today. You have this model so you can follow along with me and create the working drawings at the same time, or just watch and learn today. And then after class, I send everyone out a copy of the model and a recording of today's class so you can watch it again, and then a step-by-step booklet so you can also step yourself through all of the different commands that we went through today. And there's some different definitions in there as well so that you can read about everything that we cover today. So if you're a visual learner or someone that learns through reading or watching, we've got that all covered for you in today's class. So let's get started. We only have 2 short hours together. Once you're created the model, that's when you start to do and think about documenting it. So if I just quickly pop this model up into a 3D view, you can see that it's a 2-story home. The model in itself is complete. Now we have to worry about creating the documents so someone could actually build on it, or we could present it to a client. Put that back into 2D. So to do that, we have to first start documenting what the plan is. And that starts with dimensioning. Setting up our dimensions so that it fully labels all of the walls so everyone knows how long every wall is. Okay, I'm going to zoom in on my model using this zoom window tool down in the lower left, holding down my left mouse button. I draw a window around what I want to magnify on my screen. I release and it's bigger. First, before you start dimensioning, you should set up your dimension settings. So I'm going to go up to Settings, and I'm going to go to Document Settings. So Settings, Document Settings. Here in Document Settings, down near the bottom, you'll see Dimension Auto Exterior. When I go to dimension the exterior of my building, these are the rules that it's going to follow. So at the very top, you see that it's got a check mark beside Overall, Projections, and Openings. That means I'm going to get 3 separate dimension lines. I'm going to have a dimension line for any openings. So a dimension line is going to appear, it's going to see that opening, and it's going to dimension to it. I'm going to get a secondary one for any projections. So there's a corner there, it sees that, and it will do all of the different corners. So I'll see dimensions like that. And then the last one is my overall dimension. So it's just going to extend out that extension line here, and I get 1 overall dimension. If you want, you can also include interior walls. So that will recognize any intersections that you have with interior walls, and it will also put in another dimension line to those interior walls. Some certain states require that as part of the building codes in that area to get approval. Most, I would think it would be California and Florida. You have to worry about seismic. So they do want to see where those intersection walls are going to be coming in there. So just check with your local building authorities to see what dimensions you do require. You may not need to do the interior walls to the exterior, but you may have to. The last one that you see here is angled walls. So if, as an example, I'm just going to erase these drawings, my building came out on a corner like this, it wants to know how you want to do the angled walls as well. So when it means angled walls, it would normally come along and do your dimensions. So you've got dimensions here, dimensions here. It would come across and see that as the end and put a dimension there for that. Angled walls will align the dimensions to the angle and put that in like this. So if you also want to have the angled wall dimensioned aligned with the building, you would check that as well. Okay, so I'm leaving angled walls and interior walls off, but those are the two options if you do want to, if you're doing an angled wall, if your building includes one, and you want to include a dimension that's aligned to that angle, you would check that as well. So I'm just going to erase all those drawings out. When it does the dimensions, you have the spacing of the dimension, and this really depends on the size of the sheet of the paper that you're using. If you're using a smaller sheet of paper and it's going to be tight to fit the building on that piece of paper because it's maybe a wide plan, you might have to tighten these up. So the dimension offset, so the initial offset off the building before it does its first string of dimensions, that's going to be 4 feet as the default that you can see here. And then every dimension string after that, one for the openings, one for the overall, that's going to be 2 feet. Every subsequent one is going to be 2 feet away from that. Okay, so again, if it's very tight and you don't think it's going to fit on the paper, tighten those up. Maybe you want 2 foot, 1 foot, whatever fits there, and whatever your drafting standards are in your current office as well. You can change those. Extension lines. 2 different options here. Standard in North America, we draw the extension line and we go right up to where the building is and we draw the line just off of the building. Standard in Australia and Asia Pacific region is to draw the extension line and then just put a short line through. And it's almost like it's being cut off by a line here, an invisible line that's being drawn, and they're shorter. Okay, so it depends on where you want your dimensions to look like. You can put them in either way. When you go to dimension the openings, do you want the openings to dimension to center line, or do you want them to be either side of the window itself or the door? So really that depends on your audience. If you're looking for, your bricklayers, they're going to want to know either side where they're stopping and starting, and when they're placing in that window, they're going to want to know those dimensions. But generically, when you're showing it to a client and maybe they haven't even picked their windows yet, we haven't confirmed sizes, you might go to center line. So it depends again on the audience. Below that, you'll see this separation, and that deals with this option here. If I checked off add opening height after width, how do I want to separate the height and the width? So when we're drawing a dimension line and we've drawn it to the window, let's just take this one as an example, and I go to either side of the window, and it will report that that's 5 feet wide. I can separate that with an X and say 5 foot by, and then 6 foot 8. It would report the height for me. Add opening height after the width and separate it by an X, or you also have the option for a dash or a forward slash, or put them on multiple lines, 5 foot on the top, 6 foot below the line. Okay, so if you do want to report the height, you have the option here, add the opening height after the width, check that off, and then how do you want to separate those so that they know exactly what it is. Okay, so options there for adding the height. Over here, end condition is important. This again is dependent on your audience and your office preferences, but where are your dimensions going to? Are they going to the exterior surface? So in our design today, that's siding. Is it going to the outside face of the siding? Or alternatively, do I want it to go to the outside face of the stud? Or do I want it to the center line of the stud? Or do I want it the center line of the interior finish? Or the interior surface, the surface of it on the inside? So depends on your audience and depends on your office standards how you want that to look. But you can have whoever you're dimensioning to. For today's class, I'm going to leave it at surface, but it's definitely very popular to have it to the exterior side of the stud. If you check off interior walls here, then you'll have to use this bottom right-hand interior walls option as well and tell it exactly where you're dimensioning to that interior wall. Is it to the leading surface, the leading edge of the core, the center of the core, the trailing edge of the core, or the trailing surface? So if we looked at this wall right here, are we going to the leading top edge of the wall, the center line of the wall, or the trailing bottom end of that wall that we're dimensioning to? So you could add those in. You need those something selected there to get your interior walls here to work. Okay, so you've got lots of options to personalize how you're dimensioning, and you should set this up before you do your dimensions. Okay, that's also true for interior dimensions. So when we go to lay out an interior string of dimensions, draw a line through the building and it will dimension to the walls. How do I want to dimension to the walls? As it crosses through a wall, am I going to the leading edge surface, the leading edge core, the center line of the core, the trailing edge of the surface, or the trailing edge of the core? So you could have multiple options selected. You can see I have going to the surface here, trailing edge, leading edge. So at every wall, I'm going to get 2 dimensions there. When I have that 2 dimensions right beside each other, it will give me the dimension of this room. So let's just say this room is 10 feet. Then it'll to that dimension. And then it sees this space between them and it'll say, oh, that's a 5.5 inches between that, and it'll dimension that. And then it'll give me, the 18 foot over here of my room. If I don't want to see that 5.5 inches, I check over here, ignore wall dimension. Dimension the 10 foot, dimension the 18 foot, but leave off the thickness of the wall in between those 2 dimensions. And you really only need that when you have 2 items checked here. So when you cross through the wall, it's going to start at the wall, end at the wall. Get rid of the dimension in between those. Okay, so that's that option there. I'm going to erase all those drawings and I am going to check to ignore the wall dimension. Once you have both of those set, you're set to add the dimensions in. And I'm going to click apply and OK. At the end of today's class, we're going to talk about setting up a template. And those settings that we just covered, the interior wall and the exterior wall dimension settings, can be saved in a template. So once you set it up once, you never have to set it up again. So at the end of today's class, I'm going to show you how to do that, how to take all of those settings that you're constantly resetting, save them so you never have to touch them again. Okay, with those set, we're going to go up to Tools, Dimensions, Auto Exterior Dimensions. It will follow the rules that I had set and dimension around the plan accordingly. So you see my 3 rows of dimensions. The first one is out 4 feet, and then 2 feet, 2 feet, and it's going to the center line of the opening, and it's going to the extensions here. My extensions are going right up to my building as I wanted it to. Tools, Dimensions, Auto Interior Dimensions. With auto interior dimensions, it's a multi-step process. You have to show it where you want the dimension line to lie. So I'm going to pull one through my building here and dimension through as many walls as I can to aid the contractor that's ultimately going to be building this, so he knows where every wall is going to be according to the dimensions that are there. You have to cross entirely through the wall. So if I want to dimension all the way through here, I can't start midway through this wall. I have to cross entirely through it for it to see it. So always go outside your building, left click, pull all the way through, left click. And as it crosses a wall, it will dimension to it. And you can see that it left off the dimension between the wall faces. So I'm not dimensioning that cavity between the 2 finishes of that wall because I ignored that interior wall dimension. This is a continuous command, meaning that you'll notice my cursor is still ready to do more dimensions. So I can dimension more. So I'm just going to come through and cross through here to get that wall. And then I'm going to cross through here to get this wall. Once I'm done, I right click and tell it that I'm finished. Okay. With those dimensions, I'm going to zoom in on them here. If we need to move them around because there's some crowding going around here, I can pick up and move a dimension. So I can left click on the dimension, right click, and say move. And I'm just going to move it over here so it's out of the way. I, however, like my dimensions to be in line. I don't want to have to jump over and see that the rest of the dimension's over here. So I'm going to select this dimension, right click, and say align. And then select this dimension, and it will jump over to align itself with that original dimension. Okay, so you can move those dimensions as you need to so that they align themselves where you need them to go. Okay, so if you ever need to move it, just align them. I'm going to cancel there. You'll also notice that we have join. So if I needed to join up some dimensions, I could do that as well. And we also have split, dimensions, and join. So for example, these dimensions right here in this hallway. If I don't want to dimension to that one wall, I could select this one dimension, right click, and say join, and then select this dimension here. Come on. Seeing the stairs above them. Okay, not a good selection there. I'm going to turn off the visibility or the selectability of my stairs by unchecking this selection here and click OK. Now I should be able to select that dimension. So sometimes when something's sitting higher in your plan than other things, if you just turn off the selectability of it through the view filter, then you'll be able to select that item. So if I select this dimension, right click and say join, and then I can pick on this dimension, it will join the two together. So then I have one dimension. If I then wanted to split them apart, I select that one dimension, right click, choose split, and then you're telling it what the split point is. So I could come to this outside face of this wall and split them there as an example. Okay. So split, join, and align once you get the dimensions in will allow you to further dimension out your building as well. Okay, so you can split them at any point. Now you have your dimensions in, and the reason I like to dimension here before going to my working drawing sheets is the automatic dimension tools recognize the walls and they automatically dimension to the walls. It was very quick and very easy to go up to tools, dimensions, auto exterior, and auto interior. When I go into the working drawing sheets, it's going to convert my model into flat lines. And I lose the ability to auto exterior and auto interior dimension. So that's why I like to do it here first, so I have them done. There are other dimensions that you can do as well. So when you're coming up to tools and dimensions, if there is something that you need to dimension to, like maybe a cabinet or something else in your model, you can use linear, aligned, and angular dimensions. Those tools will also be found out in the working drawing settings as well. But if you wanted to add them here, so they're part of that model, you can do that and add them in here. The one that I want to highlight and use today is room dimension. So I'm going to pick on room dimension, and then I'm going to come down here to this room right here. I'm just going to zoom in on it so it's nice and big on the screen. For the room dimension tool, the first thing it wants me to do is pick a corner. With any tool in Envisioneer, if you're using it for the first time, always look down in the lower left at the prompts that it's giving you. Every tool will prompt you on what to do next. So right now it's prompting me to pick the first corner of the room. So I'm going to pick this bottom left-hand corner of the room. And then it says, okay, pick the width of the room. So I'm going to come across the room and say that this is the width, left click. And then it says, give me the length of the room. And I'm going to come up and left click. So it says this room is 11 foot 2¼ inches by 11 foot 7 and 1/8 of an inch. So I can go width by length or length by width. And I can pick the dimension style that it's going to use for that. And then all I have to do is click OK. and that dimension comes into the room. And that text, I can move it around if I need to. So that's just going to show me the overall dimensions of that room. Okay. We also have another dimensioning tool that we can use, and I'm going to zoom window in this back left room, and I'll profile this tool. If you go up to Tools and go to Analyze, Schedules, Room Region by Room, so Tools, Analyze, Schedules, Room Region by Room. This tool will allow me to not only dimension the room, it's going to give me either the area of the room, the perimeter dimension of the room, or the volume of the room. It also allows me to label it. So right now we'll see default area / perimeter. I'm going to change that to dining room. And I want it to give me the area of the room. I don't need the perimeter of the room. And I could also do volume of the room and give it a height here. Volume is required a lot of the times if you're doing HVAC calculations. And they'll need to know the volume of that room for balancing purposes. So you might want to include that volume as well and have it in there. This also corresponds to a schedule. So when you produce your working drawings, you can also include a room finish schedule. And the room finish schedule could say for this particular room, what's the floor finish, what's the ceiling finish, what's the wall finish, and the base finish, and any notes that you want to put into it. And it can include that in the room finish schedule. So it would attribute that to the dining room. So I could say floor finish is hardwood, ceiling finish is Benjamin Moore, number sign 150. The wall finish is Benjamin Moore, number 2401. And the base finish is, let's just say Benjamin Moore, number 150. And that would include itself in my material, in my room finish material schedule that I can produce at the end. This won't appear on my plan. This information does. But these are additional schedule fields that will show up in the schedule. So when I click OK, I need to show it where the dining room is. And as I move my cursor, you can see that blue moving around. It's indicating, is this the dining room? When I'm in the dining room, all I have to do is left click once, and it will label it as a dining room and give me the area and the volume. And I can do additional rooms. So this is a repetitive tool as well. So I could go on and do kitchen and do all of my different rooms in here. I'm going to hit cancel. We just need that one. Once it's in here, you can look at the properties of it and bring back up that information. So as we saw, dining room was a little bit too wide. I can truncate the word room. Okay. It is always going to center itself in the room. So I can't move that text. So in that way, it's a little bit limiting. If you want it to be somewhere very specific, I suggest using text and filling in that information instead. Okay. I'm going to zoom back out. So how do we get the text in those rooms if we don't use that room region by room? We can go up to Tools and Text and Text. Tools, Text brings up a text editor, and it allows you to type out any text that you want and use any text style that you want. So I can come in here and use any kind of style of text that I would need and want to use. And over to the right-hand side, we have predefined text. So predefined text is text that we've already typed out for you to save you time. So in there you can see dining room, kitchen, garage as examples. Okay. By double clicking any one of these, so if I double click on kitchen, it adds kitchen in here. Okay. And then I could add that into my model itself. And by clicking on multiple text insert, it allows me to do multiple strings of text as I go through. I see a question popping up. I'm just going to put this on hold for a minute before we insert that text to make sure I answer the questions. And going over to my console. Can we also get the area of the house and or the garage area? Yes, you could. So just the same as I did the room region in that one room, you could do the room region of the garage. And the added bonus of doing that, and let me just show you this. So I'll insert the word kitchen and then we'll talk about the added bonus of adding in the garage area. So I'm going to put kitchen in the kitchen. Okay, and then I'm just going to hit cancel. I used the room region for this dining room and it gave me the area of that dining room. You could do the exact same thing for a garage. And then when you come up to tools, analyze area perimeter, it recognizes that dining room is a separate room region in that house. So that could be the same as your garage. So if you have to subtract the area of the garage off of your totals, you could say for that, omit the dining room. So the footprint area is this, or you could say subtract it off. Okay, subtract off the garage area. So the area of the home is 968.6 square feet. Okay, so if that's what you're looking for the garage, because you need to ultimately subtract that area out, that's exactly how you would do it. And this gives you the report of the area of the entire house. So I've got a total area for the entire house of 3,184.7 square feet. My ground floor area minus the dining room, which we could say would, if that was the garage, would only be 968. And then using a note, just like we did with the kitchen, putting the word kitchen in the kitchen, then we can create that. Okay. Once text is inserted, it can also be edited. So dining room, the only way I could change this is I looked at its properties and I could come through and change the words here. I can't change where it's being placed. I can change its settings in here, but that's all I can do. It's got a text style here. That's the only thing I can use for that. But if I look at the word kitchen, if I look at its properties, I can come back here and change it to say kitchenette if I needed to. I could add in another text style if I needed to and give it a different size, anything that I needed with that as well, and click OK. You'll notice the blue square there. That allows me to pick it up and move it. So if I wanted it to be perfectly in line with dining room, I just hover over dining room. You see that line appearing? And I know that they're perfectly in line. Okay, so you can move things around and change them and change their text style if you wanted them all to match as well. Okay, so add in any text that you need to here. The text that you add in here is always going to appear with your plan when you turn text on. So I wouldn't fully put all of my text here. I wouldn't start denoting all of my walls and putting all the text in. I would leave all of my text until I get out into the working drawing sheets, because I can then turn it on and off as I need to and put it on different layers. When I add text in here, it all comes onto the same layer. So I either have all my text on or all of my text off. Whereas I have more flexibility when I go out to my working drawing sheets to turn it on and off as I need to and only put it on the plan that I want to. Okay, there is another question, so I'm going to slip back out to the questions. Is there a minimum size for text? I'm going to say yes for readability purposes, but when we're looking at the text sizes, and if I look at the properties here and notes, if I right click and edit that text style, we've got it down to a 1/4 inch equals a foot. I mean, you can get that down to an 1/8 inch and still be readable. But these texts in the software are real size. So when you scale your model up and you scale your model down, the text is still going to be an 1/8 of an inch tall when you print it. So it's not, the text is not scaled when you scale the model. And I'm going to give you an example of that when we start to insert this on the working drawing sheets. Just think of it, if any of you ever have, or maybe I'm the only one old enough to have done it, is when you're hand drafting. When you're hand drafting, you don't change the size of your text when you're working on a detail, when you're working on a floor plan, when you're working on a section. A sheet of drawing always has the same height of text. So it looks consistent and it looks nice on the drawing sheet. It doesn't get blown up and one size of text is huge over here and smaller over here. So to help with that, our text size that you see here is real world height. That's 1/8 of an inch on your printed paper. The height of that text is going to be, regardless if the plan is an 1/8 inch scale, 1/2 inch scale, 1/4 inch scale, it's consistent height. Okay, so you can change those heights. I wouldn't recommend going underneath 1/8 of an inch for readability purposes. Okay. So we have the height of the text. And again, I would generally leave my text to working drawings, but you can take advantage of the tools here, room region by room, to get that in as an example, and dimensioning a room using that tool, or just standard text to do that. The last thing that I want to do before we get into working drawing sheets is to cut my sections. You have to show it where you're cutting through the building to do your sections, and you do that here in model space, and then we insert the section views onto our working drawing sheets. So I'm going to be cutting 2 sections through our model, and I'll step you through that. Looking down at the bottom of the screen, you see the sections tool. If you look, there's an arrow beside it, and if you click on that, you can create a new section. Okay, again, this is where I would recommend always looking down in the lower left-hand corner of your screen and looking at the prompts. The prompts are telling me to pick the first point of my section. Where do I want to saw cut through my building? And again, you're cutting through the entire building. So make sure you're well out onto the lawn here. And wherever you pick, that's also where it's going to be putting your section bubble heads. So if I picked here, my bubble heads would be interrupted by my dimensions. So I'm going to pick out further out here so it's not going to be interrupted by my dimensions. So I'm going to left click once here. So I'm cutting through that door, cutting through my stairs, coming all the way through my building, and coming all the way out to the other side. Where I'm drawing this line is where it's going to saw cut through my building so I can see a section of that building. I left click again out here on the lawn. And now I move my cursor up or down to show where I want to see the section being cut. Okay, so I'm going to pull up. As I'm pulling up, you can see that it's creating like a rectangle. That's the visibility, how far back I can see. So if I'm right here, I wouldn't be able to see the range or those cabinets or anything. But if I pick all the way back through my building, I'll be able to see all the way back to the back. So go deep with your section lines and left click. And then it creates a section of the building. Okay, exactly where I cut it. And over here to the right, you'll see that it's labeled section 1, and it's got its text label there and its style that it's using. And you can see where I'm cutting it. So if I just zoom in here, you can see I can pick that up and I can move it if I wanted to. See how I'm moving it? Just putting my cursor in the middle of there and moving that section line as I need to, if I wanted to show the cut going through. Okay. You can change the name of section 1 if you needed to be a different name as well right here. But all I want us to do at this point is to click on this 2D blueprint view to go back to our model. Let's create another section. Go back to the section tool at the very bottom of your screen. You'll see the arrow, click on it, and select Create New Section again. I'm going to move my model. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit outside my model here. So again, those little section bubble heads is not going to be interrupted by my dimensions. Left click here, pull all the way through my building, left click here, and I want to look all the way to the right. Left click here. And it creates the corresponding section for this. So we can see this section. Okay, put it back into 2D. So before you ever go to your working drawing sheets, make sure you use the dimension and text tools, take advantage of the automated tools, cut the sections that you are going to require, file, save your model, and then go to the working drawing sheets. So I'm going to go to sheet number 1. When you click on your first sheet of paper, you're transported to an entirely different environment in Envisioneer. No longer at the top do you see are you inserting anything with the model? So you don't see building, interiors, landscape, terrain. We see insert, we see draw, and we see things like lines. We see modify, things like move and explode. And we see tools like text and dimensions. So this is all about documentation in this environment. Inserting views of our model and drawing in any extra lines, any extra text and dimensions that we need to fully document the plan. When you come out into this environment as well, you'll notice that your cursor is no longer an arrow. Now it's crosshairs. The crosshairs allow you to line up things nicely on a sheet of paper. So instead of left clicking for an arrow to select something, now we're lining things up so that they look nice on our drawing sheet. So just another environment change. When you come out here, as a default, you're going to see a title block with the CADSoft logo on it. We're going to talk today about the size of the paper that's here and how to get your own paper sizes in there. This is part of that template. So when you hit File and New and you select one of those templates, in that template, it automatically loads in these title blocks for you so that it can get you started and get you creating working drawings. But they can be changed and they can be updated and they can reflect your information. And we're going to cover that as well. So first of all, this very first sheet, we can see down in the lower right that it is a new project, 123 city. So I'm just going to zoom in. I'm going to use the zoom window tool. It's docked up at the top of the screen here in worksheet mode. I'm going to click on it and then I'm going to left click, and what's inside the box is going to magnify on my screen when I left click again. So we can see it's got the project name called New Project 123 Main. The client is Mr. Jones. This is a floor plan. There could be a drawing sub name if we wanted to. It's got date, scale, sheet number. All of these different pieces of text. The text on this title block was inserted in 3 different ways, and I'm going to show you the 3 different ways. And they're done 3 different ways strategically as well. So I want everyone to go to the File pull-down menu and go to Project Manager. In here, you'll recognize in Project Manager the strings of text that have been used. New project, Mr. Jones, 123 Main in the city. So if I call this project, we're going to call this 2-story home. Mr. Jones will be Mr. Smith. 123 Maple. And the city, let's call it Newtown. Okay. When I click OK here, it automatically updates in my title block. So this title block has been keyed into the project manager. What I type in here goes in here automatically for us. That's the only strings of text that you see there. So how do I change the sheet number, the date, and how do I get rid of CADSoft for my own company name? I want you to click on company name. Okay, over to the right, where we normally have our catalog panel when we're working in model view, now we have object properties. So as we select something in our model, it'll show us there the properties of what we've just selected. So when we clicked on the text company name, you can see that a whole bunch of things got highlighted green because they're part of a block together. they're part of the title block 24 by 36. They've been grouped together so that they move together and they're always attached. But you can see that there's two options to edit it. I can edit the definition of the title block, and I can edit the attributes of the title block. I'll click on Edit beside Definition first. When I click on Edit Definition, you can see that where we had Mr. Jones and two-story home gets changed to $project underscore name, $sign address, and city. Those strings here, project name, address, city, when they have that $sign in front of them, it knows to come up here to the project manager and go to project name, address, city. And you can put all of those in and the contact name, Mr. Smith. So any of the fields that you see in here, if you put a $sign beside the name in your project title block, it'll automatically look to the project manager. So as long as it's $sign project underscore name, we get the project name. $sign address, we get the address, and so on. So that's how that information automatically gets filled in for that. Okay? Then underneath that, you'll see drawing name, drawing subname, all of that information. And at the bottom, I'm just going to pan up here, we see page number drawn by all of this information. Okay, so when you see the ones, all of this different information, we can change each one of these. Some of these you change by the sheet, and some of them is the same on every sheet of paper that you have. So as example, on every sheet of paper that you have, you're going to have the same date. So that is just a string of text that you can change. So you can see here, July 2022. If I look over in our object properties, it tells me that the font that it's using is Envisioneer hand font. The height of that is 1/8 of an inch. Its color is black ink. It's got a transparent background. And the contents say July 2022. If I click on the button beside the contents, I could change that and say that it's July 28th, 2022. And that will update it. It'll update it on this sheet. And if I look at 2 elevations, 3 sections and details, 4 site plan, it'll change it too. Text that you change that's part of a block will change every block that is the same. On every one of these different tabs, it has this title block. And every one of these title blocks is the same. It's the same block. The text gets updated on each one of them to be the same. So each one of them will be July 28th, 2022. Each one of them will also be CADSoft 255 Woodlawn. So on each one of them, you can click on that string of text, click over here on 255 Woodlawn, and put your company address, city, zip code, and click OK. And that will update it. This will be your company name. You can change that to be whatever your company name is, and that will update it on every single sheet. But things like page number, scale, drawn by, checked by, approved by, and the drawing name, those can change on every single sheet. They're not always going to have the same page number. They're going to be absolutely different page numbers and drawing names. So I'm going to hit escape, and it's important that when you've made modifications like this, you hit escape. When you hit escape, you're congealing back that block. You're not working on the individual strings of text anymore. You're not moving individual lines anymore. You're saying solidify this block, and this will be updated. So just watching here, if I click on 2 elevations right now and zoom in on the title block, you can see on this title block, it got changed to your company address, city, zip code. It's known as a 2-story home on 123 Maple, Newtown. and it's July the 28th. But its sheet number is A2, and its drawing name is Elevations. And on one floor plan, we have floor plan A1. These strings of text, floor plan A1, are what we call attributes. Attributes are strings of text attached to a block that are updatable on every sheet. So if I look now when I'm highlighted on this title block, and I look over to the right on the object properties, I can see that I can edit the attribute. So I can change the scale, the page number, the drawing name, and the subname. So I could change that to be, instead of floor plan drawing subname, this could be ground floor, and we'll also put on maybe roof plan. And when I click OK, that updates this one sheet, just this sheet. 2 elevations is still going to say elevations. Attributes are attributed to the block, but only update that one instance of the block. Editing the text of a block by editing the definition changes every instance of that block. So we did that strategically so that you can update the client name, the drawing names, everything as you need to per sheet for all sheets. Okay, so the title block has that already built in for you. So you can edit that text. And when you're editing the title block, if you edit the definition, CADSoft as a logo is just an image file that we imported. I'll show you how to import image files, but you can delete out the CADSoft logo and then import your own image and place it in there. Always remembering though, hit escape when you're done so that it congeals back the title block. And now on every one of the sheets, the CADSoft logo is now gone. We appreciate it if you kept it. Nice advertising for us. But by all means, of course, put in your own title block. Okay, I'm going to go back to the sheets. We're going to deal with this sheet for this for inserting our different elevation sections details, and then I'm going to show you how to bring in different sheet sizes as well. This is a 24 by 36 inch piece of paper in landscape mode, but I'll show you when we're done inserting all of our views how to get in different sizes. So when you're bringing in views of your model, you come to this Insert tab, and the very first icon you see there is called Smart Views, and there's an arrow beside it. Click on the arrow beside it and hit Define a Smart View. Define a view of your model that you want to put on this particular sheet. It's called a Smart View because they're updatable. If you change your model, you can update these sheets to reflect the changes that you made to the model. All of the controls that you have are here on the left-hand side. You want a 2D ground floor plan, there's the scale that you want. Or you want a 3D view, or a 3D quick view, or your elevation view, or one of your section views. We're going to start off with a 2D ground floor plan at a 1/4 inch scale. That again can be any scale that you want. What you see in this preview dialog box is exactly what you're going to get. That's called WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. So with WYSIWYG in mind, we need to turn on and off the visibility of different items so they're not part of this 2D ground floor plan. I don't want to see my site plan. I can lightly ghosted see my second floor and my foundation plan. I don't want to see them. The controls for that are down here at the bottom. Here we have our view filter, where we can filter different things out of sight. So we click on the view filter. On the right-hand side of the view filter dialog box, it shows all of the locations that we have. And right now, all locations are checked. I'm going to uncheck all locations. because I want to change the visibility of different items separately. On my foundation location, if I highlight it, I'm going to say display none. All the eyes closed. Nothing on my foundation will be visible. I go to my second floor. Display none. All of the eyes are closed on anything to do with my second floor. On my ground floor location, I'm going to turn off the visibility of ceilings and roofs and floors. I don't need to see their outlines on my floor plan. I'll turn them off. At the top of this dialog box, it breaks all the different types of elements by groups. So these are elements on the location that go into the physical building model. The elements on terrain are separate. I don't want to see my site boundary. I don't want to see the green outline. This green line right here is the extent of my terrain. I don't need to see that. If I go to notation, I could turn off dimensions in text if I wanted to. I could insert a view without the text as an example, just my dimensions. Viewing aids, do I want to see the section mark? I'm going to keep its visibility on, but I could turn it off as well. Okay, and then click OK. That updates the view. Another thing to remember about WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get, is if I pan my model up like this, what I see is what I get. I get a half-cut model. So make sure you can see the entire model. Okay? If you zoom in and zoom out, and I zoom in too much, that's all I'm going to get. So make sure you zoom in so that you can see the entire model. Zooming in and zooming out does not affect the scale. The only thing that affects the scale is the scale that's over here. So you change the scale as you need to over here. Zooming in doesn't. We just want to make sure what we see is what we get. Okay? There's two different ways to insert your model, as an image or as a drawing. Make sure it's set to drawing. When it's set to drawing, it recognizes that lines are lines and text is text. It creates a vector image. A vector is very crisp to print. If you've ever printed something and it looks very washed, it's because you printed it as an image. An image is a raster. It's made up of tiny little pixels on the screen. And the more you zoom in, the worse it's going to look. And when you print it, it's got a bit of a haze to it. So make sure when you're inserting floor plans, sections, details, those come in as a drawing file. Once you have all of that selected and your view looks like mine, hit Insert. A copy of the floor plan attaches itself to your cursor and you left click to insert it. It's now part of that sheet. It is grouped together just like our title block. So when I select a piece of it, it all highlights green. I get a blue grip in the middle, and if I hold down my left mouse button with that grip, it allows me to move it as I need to. You'll also see its properties over to the side. It recognizes that it's a block that's all grouped together called 2D plan. I can update the contents as I need to. So if I've inserted it and afterwards made changes to my model, I can update this view and change the settings of it. If I redefine the settings, that means I'm going in and I'm changing something. Maybe I want to turn off the word dining room as an example. I go to my view filter to be able to see room regions, because we created that as a room region. Shut that eye, click OK, and it disappears. And then all I have to do is hit update, and it updates that view. Updating the contents looks back to what contents might have changed in my model versus when I inserted this, and it will update it. Okay, and I'm just going to shift this over so it's on my sheet. Okay, let's do that again. Define a smart view. We're on our 2D ground floor plan. This time I'm going to change the scale to be 1/8 of an inch. Okay, go down to the view filter. Hit display none. Go to the Elements on Terrain, display none. Go to Notation, display none. Go to Viewing Aids, display none. So if I inserted this view right now, nothing would be visible. It's an empty view. But I turned everything off, and now the only thing that I want is my roof surface. So click on the plus sign beside roofs, because roofs has two different components. The framing and the surface are separated. We just want the roof surfaces to be turned on. Okay, and click OK. We can see our ground floor roof and we can see our second floor roof. They're going to be inserted at an 1/8 inch scale. It doesn't matter if I zoom in or zoom out, the scale is the same. Okay, make sure it is set to drawing and hit insert. And a copy of the roof plan attaches itself to your cursor. Left click to insert it. It's a totally different scale. Okay, let's do that again. We'll go back up to Define a Smart View. This time change the 2D ground floor to 2D second floor. Okay, and then go to the View filter, uncheck all locations, Foundation, display none. Ground floor, display none. Second floor, turn off the visibility of the ceilings, the floors, and the roof. Elements on Terrain, display none. Notation, there isn't any. We didn't put any dimensions. We're going to show you how to update that. And Viewing Aids, we don't need the section marker again. Click OK. We just have our second floor plan, and we're going to change this to 3/16 of an inch. Click Insert. Place it down here in the lower left-hand corner. Leave room because we are going to add dimensions and update it. Left click. Okay, I'm just going to hold here because there is a question coming up and I want to answer it. So no matter how we shrink the drawing, the scale stays the same. How can that be? The scale of the text is going to remain the same. You can see here that the scale of the model, when I inserted my second floor plan, it shrinks. It shrinks my roof plan. That got inserted at an 1/8 inch scale. My second floor plan is a 3/16 inch of a scale, but my ground floor is 1/4. But when I add in next the text, the dimensions around my second floor, you can see that the text remains consistent. It is going to stay at that, I believe it was a 1/4 inch or an 1/8 inch tall. So that's what's going to remain the same. Okay, so let's do that now so I can illustrate that for you. I'm going to go back out to the model view. I'm going to go to the second floor down here in the lower left, change the location, Tools, Dimensions, Auto Exterior Dimensions. They fly around the building for me. Now I'm going to go back to my one floor plan sheet. I'm going to select on the second floor, and I'm going to tell it that I want to update the contents. And the dimensions fly around the building for me. If I zoom in on the dimensions between both of them, you can see that they're a consistent height. It hasn't changed at all. Okay? It doesn't scale up the text size. They remain the same. So when I scale this drawing after it's printed with a 3/16 inch scale, that will read the right dimensions. When I scale this one at a 1/4 inch, it will read those right dimensions. It's the height of the text that doesn't change. So as an example, with this roof plan that's even at a smaller scale, if I redefine its settings and tell it that I want the notation on for the dimensions and click update. Even though this is a significantly smaller plan than our ground floor plan, the size of the text is the same. They're no different. So if I pick up this and move it and move the text on top of each other, you can see it's the same height of text. Okay, there's no difference in the size of the text, but it does scale the actual model itself. Okay, so that does update and change. But whoops, edit, undo there. It doesn't change the model size itself is always going to update depending on the scale, but the size of the text will not. Okay, so it's a nice, consistent way to read your drawings and blueprints on the one sheet. Okay, so 3 different views, 3 different scales, and we've got that one sheet done. Let's go to 2 elevations. Again, it's coming back here to define a smart view. So understanding working drawings is just really practicing with defining a smart view and understanding that one dialog box. Once you have that mastered, you can create any working drawing view that you need to. Define a smart view. I want an elevation view. I want my front elevation. I want it to be at 1/4 inch equals a foot. What I see is what I get. It's kind of clipping off my foundation, so I'm going to zoom out a little bit. I don't want the entire terrain line to go through. So I'm going to come down here to the view filter and turn off my terrain. Okay. You'll also notice that here at the very top under template, there's a template called elevation. And I'm going to apply that. And then I'm going to turn off the boundaries in the template. What that does when I come back here on elements on location is it turns off the visibility of all interior elements. The tool itself will do that automatically for you. As it's going through and creating that elevation, it automatically filters out any interior elements. By coming in here under template and turning them off manually, it just speeds up how quickly it can create that elevation for you. Okay, so there's our elevation view. Over to the left-hand side here, you see datum lines. With the datum lines, I've said, yes, I want to include datum lines. For those of you that are unfamiliar with the term datum line, it's just the elevation of the different items. So it will show me where grade is. It will do another line here to my floor level, my head height, my roof peak, my wall heights can be done in there as well. And it's just coming through, putting a little datum marker at the end of each one of these. And then it's telling it that this is, as an example, grade. And then it'll tell me the height of grade, 0, as an example. And then this is my head height. It'll say head height, and that will say 6'8", as an example. Those are datum lines. The settings of where those lines occur happens right here. So we can see here with our datum lines that we have our leader line is going to be on both sides, and they're going to be 5 foot off of the building, and they're going to be read by the color. The line type is a solid line, and the line weight is by the layer as well. The datum lines running through the building are going to extend over 1 foot. I'm going to change their line type to be a dash line, just so you can see the difference between the datum line and the leader line. The text, the description, so where it says grade or head height, is going to be above the datum line to the right. And the elevation, the actual height, is going to be below the datum line on the right. So I'm going to change that to above to the left, just so you can see the difference. Okay, it's using our dimension style and it's centered. And I click apply and OK. I want it to show me where grade is. Yes. I want it to show me my head height. Yes. I want it to do that for my ground floor. Yes. And my second floor. Yes. I'm going to leave off the foundation just to show you how you can turn different ones on and off. Again, this is a drawing, so we want to make sure that lines are lines and text is text, so it comes in crisp and prints nicely. Make sure it's set to drawing. The only other option you could do is you could turn on hatch patterns. So if there's any hatch patterns associated to it, they will turn on and automatically be generated. So I'm going to leave them on for this view. And in another view, I'll leave them off and show you how to add them manually as well. And then all you have to do is hit Insert. It generates your elevation, and you left click to insert it. There's your datum lines. Okay, you see that, I'll erase all that text. There's head height for my ground floor and my second floor, grade level. Off of grade, head height is 8 foot, 1.5 inches, and 17 feet and 5 1/8 of an inch off of grade. Okay, so you can dimension to those. Define a smart view. Do an elevation view. This time, do the right elevation. Zoom out, view filter, select the elevation, turn off the terrain, and click OK. And change this one. We'll change this one as well. We'll keep this one as a hidden line. That's fine. Yes to the datum lines. Set it to drawing. Insert. It generates our right elevation, and I'm going to put it to the right. Now, this is the added benefit of having these crosshairs. I'm going to zoom window here because I want these to be lined up. And see, when I put it in, it was slightly off. So I'm going to select this elevation, right click to reveal options that I can do to the elevation. Select Move. Move it from the endpoint and line it up with this one over here on its endpoint. Okay? And left click. Oh, sorry. Move, down, align, and back. Okay, so we can see the heights lined up nicely together. Okay, define a smart view. Let's look at our elevations. Let's go to the rear elevation. Let's change it to a realistic view. So we get to see the materials. When I change that to a realistic view, look at my insertion options. I only have image. Because it's using textures, colors, it has to make those out of pixels. When it has to make those out of pixels, it has to be a raster image. And we'll insert this as a raster. Now, it will show us all the colors. It will print a little hazier than a vector, but it'll look nice because we have the colors. The other thing to note about inserting a view that is an image, it's like taking a photograph at that moment in time. Where the other ones we were able to update, we updated that floor plan to include the dimensions. These ones can't be updated. It's a photograph at that time. So when I insert this view, if something about my rear elevation changes, I have to delete this view and insert a new one. Hit Insert. You can see how big that is. Left click to insert it. I'm going to select it, right click, and scale it from here, 0.5. Okay, so it's smaller. Okay, and then just move it over here into position in the corner. Okay, so another elevation change. Okay, so we have one that is hatched, one that is not hatched, one that is an image file. Okay, last elevation, define the smart view. Go to your elevation page, go to your last elevation, which would be your left elevation. Zoom out so you have everything. Change this one to a pattern view. Turn off the visibility of the different elements by selecting the elevation template, and turn off the elements on terrain. And make sure it's set to drawing, insert. It'll generate that one and insert that view. Now I could be particular as well and make sure that these are lined up vertically. So I could select this elevation, and I'm just going to zoom in on here, right click, move, put my cursor at the end point here, and drag it over to that end point. Okay, so if you want them to be nicely aligned on your drawing sheets, use and take advantage of that crosshair to line everything up nicely on the sheet itself. Okay, let's take a look at this right elevation to begin with. I want to add some more information to it, add in some hatch, add in some additional text. Okay, file and save. And we will go to the Draw tab. Under the Draw tab, you can add in additional lines if you want to. There's polylines, circles, rectangles, revision clouds. So if this is something has changed and you reproduce these drawings, you need to put a revision cloud around an area, you can do that. And what we want to look at is the different types of hatch. There's polygon hatch and boundary hatch. I'm going to first of all show you polygon hatch. So select polygon hatch. The dialog box appears. When it creates a polygon hatch, what we do is we create a boundary by drawing a line. So I'm going to be drawing a line out here, just like this. And when I draw that line, what it's going to do is fill in that area with whatever hatch pattern I choose. So I'm going to make it look like siding. So a bunch of lines are going to come through this area. And then stop at that boundary line. I can include the line, so part of that hatch is going to have a line around it, or I could disclude it. I'm going to say don't include the line, but do include the pattern. I'm going to select the pattern, scroll down till I see siding horizontal, and click OK. So I'm creating an area in that elevation where I want to show horizontal siding. It's going to initially draw a line around it, and then once it's done that, it will fill that area in with the hatch. Okay, I'm going to click OK. And then I just start drawing on my screen, left-clicking on points here, of where I want that hatch to reside. So I just want to give it the notion that there's siding there. I don't want to have an entire elevation full of hatch. That's a lot of ink. We're all trying to be more conservative of ink and materials that we use. So instead of hatching the entire plan, it is okay to just indicate the hatch pattern by putting in an area like this. Okay, and then when you're done, you right-click and hit Finish, and it shows that hatch pattern in that area. So it gives the notion that this is siding throughout this area. The other option that you have is called boundary hatch. Boundary hatch will detect a boundary, lines that fill in and create an area, and then it will fill in hatch in that area. So as an example, we're going to be filling in hatch in this roof area. So it will recognize these lines right here, and it will fill in hatch in that area for us because it will see those lines. Okay, to do that, we tell it first of all the hatch pattern that we want. So I'm going to left click here and tell it that I want shingles, roof shingles. Thought we had asphalt shingles here. I'm not seeing shingles. Roof shingles. There we go. Roof shingles. Click OK. I can change the scale. I can increase it if I wanted to, or change the angle. It's going to appear like it did on the front elevation at that one scale, which all of the scales have been set, but you can change them if you need to. And then we need to select the boundary. When you see this outer and ignore, if I was to choose a boundary hatch in this area right here, it would detect that this is the overall boundary. This line right here, coming down to here, up and over, it recognizes this as our boundary. It will see and detect this outer boundary. So it'll see this window right here, and it will, if I set it to outer, it won't pour hatch into that area. It will ignore it. If I say ignore it, it will run the hatch all the way through it. So it will detect interior boundaries and ignore them, or you can tell it to run it all the way through. Okay, I'm going to click on this button right here to select the boundary. Watch as I move my cursor through the different areas. It will detect the hatch areas that I have on my screen. And as I'm going through and selecting those hatch areas, it'll highlight them green. Okay, as I have this highlighted green, if I left click to select it, it will automatically fill in that area with hatch for me. Okay, I think I'm seeing people are delayed in their settings here. So I'm just going to hold off for a minute. And wait for everybody to catch up to me. Okay. Okay, I hope everybody is seeing my screen right now, seeing the area that I've hatched. Okay, and then once you have that selected, all you have to do is tell it that, yes, you want to include hatch in that area, and it will bring up the dialog box, and you click OK, and then it will add hatch into that area for you. Okay, so you can add hatch using boundary hatch, or you can add hatch using polygon hatch, depending on which hatch you need. If you want it in an entire area, use boundary. If you want to be selective, then just use the polygon hatch. Okay, let's go to sections and details. Under sections and details, I'm going to come back up and do again, define a smart view. Define a view of my model I want to insert. I go to the Sections tab, and I see my Section 1. And this again is WYSIWYG, so I'm going to zoom out so I can see everything. What you see is what you get. And I'm going to come to the View filter. What you may have noticed is that some of the eyes are half closed. It's not because it's almost lunchtime and we're getting tired of listening to Chantal go through the lessons. It's because some of the items are have open eyes and some of them are closed. All of the framing items are closed. So we want to turn them all on. To be able to do that, we have to unlock the items that are currently locked. So if you see a lock that's turned to the left, turn it to the right, and then hit display all. And then all the eyes are bright and wide open like everybody was an hour and 20 minutes ago. And we click OK. All the different items are visible. We see the rafters running through our plan. We see the top plates and bottom plates and blocking halfway up the wall. We see all the different framing elements. We get everything turned on. And again, with elevations, just like our sections, just like our elevations, we can turn on the datum lines and tell it, yes, I want to know where grade is. Yes, I want to know where the floor level is. On my ground floor, yes, and on my second floor, yes. And sure, on the foundation, yes. Okay, and then I just hit insert, making sure this one is set to drawing. This one, depending on the size of your model, can take some time to generate, because not only is it creating a view of your model, it's creating all of the different framing that went into it too. So there's lots of lines for it to generate. And then you just left click to insert it. Okay, so we get our grade, our second floor, our foundation floor level, all denoted here. Okay. Something that we can do here and that we can do on our elevations as well is add further text and notes. Okay, so I'm going to go to Tools. You can either use Tools here and use the different notes from the different icons. And all of these are also available in the pull down as well. So if I go to Leaders, Description with Leader, I can pull off a text note. Okay, so Tools, Leaders, Description with Leader, or you can also pick that off of the icons as well. Description with Leader, you'll see that my cursor right now looks like a box. It wants me to pick on something in my model. I'm going to pick on this wall. And then you'll notice my cursor changes to the crosshairs, and down in the lower left-hand corner, it says pick first insertion point. Where do I want the arrow to start? Well, I want it to start on that wall. So I left click once. Then I'm going to come up on an angle, and I'm actually going to turn angle snap on for this. Come up on an angle, left click, and then come over, left click. And it tells me exactly what that is. That's 2x6 cement board siding wall that I just clicked on. If I click on that text, over in the right, we get the object properties. We see the scale of that text, we see the contents of it, and the style that it's using. If I click on contents, this is where I can add to that note. So not only can it say 2x6 cement board siding, it's looking at the description of that wall. So that wall, if I look at its catalog, it is a 2x6 cement board siding wall. Okay, I can add to that. I can hit enter and say OSB sheathing. And then I can say that I've got a 2x6 stud. And I have a blown in insulation and drywall. So I can expand on that note and click OK. It gets to be a long note, but from there I can pick that note up and I can move it as I need to as well. Okay, let's do that again. Tools, Leaders, Description with Leader. I'm going to pick on this door. Left click, come over on, and I like these crosshairs, I like my drawings to be very lined up. So I'm going to line up the angle where it started to be angled there, and then I'm going to line up where that line ended. Left click, 32-inch hinge door. And then it creates all of that text in a nice row. So it's not all over the place. And as you're trying to read some people's sections and details, the text is all over the place and it's hard to read. If you keep them all nicely in a row, it makes it easier to be able to read. Okay, so you can pull off notes like that all the way through just by clicking on something. You can also create just text. So if I come over here to the text tool, and that's the same as going Tools, Text, Text, I can type anything that I want. So as an example, I'm going to type in section 1. I'm going to highlight that, make it bold, underline it, and change it to a 1/2 inch equals a foot. Okay, so 1/2 inch equals a foot, and click OK. And put section 1 under section 1. And I might bring it to the very edge of the drawing here and insert section 1. Okay, so you can insert just text. You can insert descriptive text as you need to. Okay, and that's for your elevations as well as your sections. Can both take advantage of both of those tools. Okay, let's insert another section view. Define a smart view. Go to our section view. Go to section number 2. This is where we're going to really take advantage of WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. I'm going to come down here to the view filter and hit display none. Elements on terrain, display none. Go back to elements on location, and I'm going to tell it that I need to see my cabinets and my appliances, and I need to see my walls. That's it. And click OK. And then I'm going to zoom in on just that area, of my kitchen. And I actually might turn off walls. I'm going to turn off the walls. I just want the cabinet drawings. That's all I get. What you see is what you get. Everything's turned off. I'm just getting a cabinet elevation view. I'm going to change the scale to be 1/2 inch equals a foot. Zooming in and out, remember, doesn't change the scale. What's recorded over here changes the scale. I do not want the datum lines. No. Okay, and then I hit insert. It generates my second section, which I've drastically reduced in options to see, and I get a cabinet elevation view. So again, I can go up to Tools, Text, Text, and this time I'll say cabinet elevations. Highlight it, change it to 1/2 inch, make sure that it's bold and underlined, and click OK. And I have my cabinet elevations. Okay, I'm going to zoom in down here. I want to illustrate something to you. I inserted this view at 1/2 inch equals a foot. I should put an extra piece of text, Tools, Text, Text, 1/2 inch equals 1 foot. Okay, it's a different scale than the rest of the drawings. We'll put that there. I've inserted this at 1/2 inch equals a foot. Everything else I've inserted at 1/4 inch on this drawing sheet. The drawing sheet itself knows a 1/4 inch equals a foot. So when I go to do Tools, Dimensions, Linear Dimension, it knows 1/4 inch equals a foot. Because under here, View Properties, the properties of this view is a 1/4 inch equals a foot. So when I go to print this entire drawing out, I print it at a 1/4 inch equals a foot, the drawing sheet. But this particular view is at 1/2 inch. So when I go up to Tools, Dimensions, Linear Dimension, and I go to start doing dimensions from the side of this cabinet to this cabinet right here, it's saying that it's 2 foot, 1.5 inches. Okay, and I'm going to go and right-click Finish. I'm going to click on this and say that I want to do Tools, Dimensions, Continuous Dimension. So from that point, I'm going to come to this cabinet right here, and then come to the fridge here, and then to the end of the fridge here. Those dimensions are wrong. That's at a 1/4 inch equals a foot, right? So the scale is still thinking it's a 1/4 inch when it should be half of that. So when I come over here to value scale, I'm going to say 0.5. And I'm going to do the same here. That's not 8 feet, that's 4 feet, 0.5. The value is half because this is a 1/2 inch equals a foot in a 1/4 inch equals a foot environment. So when I'm drawing that dimension line, it's dimensioning like it's in a 1/4 inch environment. But the drawing I inserted is a 1/2 inch. I know this is probably the hardest concept to come through, but I hope I'm explaining it well enough so that you understand that the environment is a 1/4 inch equals a foot. The view I inserted is a 1/2 inch. So when I go to dimension, I have to half those dimensions. That's a 3 foot, 36 inch refrigerator. Those are two 2-foot cabinets, upper cabinets. Okay. So that's why I would change that scale. Okay. The dimension size, the actual physical text size is going to be the same because it's consistent through my drawings, but that's an alternative view inserted here. So it has to be dimensioned differently. A 1/2 inch view on a 1/4 inch environment. Okay. Last tab is our site plan view. Define a smart view. We can see our site plan, but I don't need all of this extra information. So I go down to our view filter. I'm going to display nothing here but our roof surface. Go to Elements on Terrain. I need the site boundary, but I do not need the terrain. Under Notation, I need nothing. Under Viewing Aids, nothing. So when I click OK, I can see the site plan and I can see our roof outline sitting on it. For your site plan views, you might have to turn on the walls and turn off the roof, depending on what your local building council needs to approve the plans. Check with them. Okay, 1/4 inch equals a foot. That is going to be pretty big on the sheet. We'll try inserting it, but I'll show you how we can change it if we need to change that scale, because that scale is big for a site plan. But we'll try it and then scale it if we need to. Make sure it's set to drawing so it's crisp and it prints nicely. Insert. It's big. It's too big. So we select it and we need to redefine the settings. We need a smaller scale. We'll try and put it in at a 3/16 of an inch equals a foot. Hit update. It might fit. Oh, it just fits. Okay, so we can see that we just get it in there at 3/16. Okay, so what I would do then when I've got, I'm just going to hit move here and just move it up slightly. When I get this set then, I would need to update this sheet because right now, remembering the sheets as a default were a 1/4 inch. I need to update the scale on this one sheet. To update the scale on the one sheet, I edit the attribute because it's different on this one sheet. Not all sheets. Attributes change it for the one sheet. And I change this to 3/16 and click OK. And just on this one sheet now, it's updated. And there is our house plan sitting on there. Now, if you need to dimension that, if you need to dimension from the house to the setback line or right to the site line, Tools, Dimensions, Linear Dimension, just like I did with those cabinets. Pick on the edge of the house, pick on the edge of the setback that you have here, or go all the way over to the site, depending on where you need to go, and then just show that dimension. Remember that we have a scale issue here. This is not a 1/4 inch equals a foot anymore. This is 3/16 equals a foot. So we're going to have to do a value scale on that as well. Okay, going from our 3/16, 3/8. I think it's 3/8. Redefine. 3/16 equals a foot. Going to our 1/4 inch equals a foot. Okay, so we have to change that down by a third there. So that's not 2 feet any longer because we've gotten this smaller. We need to scale that up, okay, and change that scale accordingly to make it go to the 3/16 of an inch instead of going to our 1/4 of an inch scale. Question coming in. So let me pause here while I go to our questions. When I print these, will that 1/8 inch still show up as an 1/8 inch? Yes, it does. So even though, and sorry, I didn't see that coming in earlier, even though I've inserted this view as a 3/16 inch view, and even though the one view on here is smaller and the one on our sections and details page, this is blown up, when we print the entire sheet, we print the entire sheet to a scale. And then that gets printed out. Okay, so it's not this one view. You can have as many different scales on one sheet as you need to, but when you print it out, you're printing to a 1/4 inch. Okay, so I'm going to print these now as an example to a PDF, and I'll show you that. So, File, Print. When I go to print this sheet, it shows me the little preview there to the right. I'm going to tell it that I'm going to be using my PDF writer. I use Soda. You could use Acrobat's, Adobe's PDF writer. There's many different PDF writers out there. I just use Soda. Okay, I tell it the size of paper. This is an Arch D size of paper. So I'm just going to see if they have, yep, Arch D, paper size. It is in a landscape orientation. When you go to print, don't use all extents because that goes out to the extents of what it can see on the drawing screen area. You want to be very specific on what you print. You want to window the area and click Window. See these little red lines in the corners? That's going to be where we're going to print to. Those are your print points. By printing out to those points, it leaves blank paper around the black border line that it's going to draw. Okay, so instead of printing to here, which will eliminate that first line, print out to here so you can see those border lines. Left click there, bring your cursor down to the other corner, left click there. And that will leave an edge so you can see those border lines. We want to make sure that we print all colors as black. Okay, if you don't and you want to see the colors, whoops, sorry, I'm printing to scale there, which I want to do otherwise. If I don't, I get all the individual colors. So if you do want to see all the colors, print to the colors. Otherwise, print all colors as black. The settings of each one of those different lines has line thickness associated to them as well. So our title block line around the border will be a nice dark line, whereas our dimension lines will be a nice thin line, and any hatch lines that we have will be even thinner still. So even though they're all printing as one color, you'll be able to differentiate between them by the line weights. Okay, and line weights is what makes one drawing look more professional than the other. We've set those up for you, and you can adjust them, and I'll show you how to do that. So I'm printing an Arch D piece of paper by landscape. We windowed around the area because we want it to be nice and accurate. We centered it on the page. We have everything color as black. We're printing to scale. It's 1/4 inch equals a foot. That's the scale of the drawing, and that's what we're printing to. Print the line weights and show the view contents. With that done, I hit the print button, and it starts up my PDF writer when I'm going to take this and print it out onto my desktop and call it sample 1. And this is our floor plan sheet. Or is this sections and this is sections and details. Sections and details. PDF, and hit save. My Soda PDF writer pops up, and I'm going to tell it to fit the width on my sheet. So you can see the different line weights coming in and printing. And there's our PDF printed. Okay, even though this is at 1/4 inch and this is at 1/2 inch, they still print. And if you laid down a scale on top of that, this would scale correctly, as with this. You'd use a 1/4 inch scale on here and a 1/2 inch scale there, and they would print correctly. Because when you're printing the sheets, you're telling it the scale that the entire sheet is. The entire sheet is a 1/4 inch environment, and you've printed to that. So it prints it to a 24 by 36 inch piece of paper. Okay, I'm going to hold there. I see some hands raising and some questions. How to make a slope terrain that will match topographic plan, plotting the lot also. Yep, we can go through that with you as well. So the question coming is, when I'm doing this site plan, not only do I want to see the boundary, but I want to be able to see all the topo lines as well. So if I go back out to the model, there are a couple of different ways to do and use terrain, and it's going to depend on the tool you have. So I'm going to go to the Terrain tab. If you're using Personal Architect, you couldn't do working drawings anyway, but if you were doing Pro Architect, you have the ability to do hills and valleys, berms and trenches, and slopes. So I could put a slope on the drawing and say that the actual terrain of our site goes down, let's say 6 feet, starting from the midpoint of the model all the way to the back of the site. It drops 6 feet, and we get our terrain lines published there. The other way, if you're using Building Essentials or Construction Suite, you will see these last two tools. You can import site data. So if you have the site data from the field recorder, from whoever did the initial topography of that site, you can bring in that site information. Otherwise, if you don't have it, but you have it in a printout and you know the spot elevations, you can use spot elevations. And spot elevations, click OK here, will allow you to put in all of the different elevations. So you can see that it recognizes the 0, the 2, the 4 going down. I could also put one in here that says at the front of our building, I'm going to put it up at 1 foot. See at the bottom, the Z value, tab, 1 foot there, and 1 foot there, and 1 foot there, and there. So you can put in all different spot points as well and type in the elevations that those are and go from there. And it will put in the grade lines for that. So if I come back here to our site plan, select the view that we inserted and said redefine that view, and I want to view filter here, put in the terrain so I see those points, I can update that view and see all of those points being put in as well and see the terrain lines. Okay, so you have that choice. Depends on if you have Building Essentials and Construction Suite. If you get berms and trenches or the spot points, you can either have one or the other. You can't use both tools in it. Okay, so you can update that. Okay, so we've went along, we've showed you how to update the model and change that. I'm going to come through and I'm going to make a change to our model. On the ground floor, this front door right here, I'm going to replace it with a, hit cancel here. I'm just going to hit pause here for a minute. File, catalogs, and open up a different catalog. I was using a different catalog. Master catalog. Okay, if I come to the door here, select the door, replace the door, and tell it that I want it to be a double front door, a 60-inch double front door, something that will see the difference. If I come back to my floor plans, remember I said they were smart views, but you have to tell it to update. So if I go to update globally the smart views, it'll show me every view that I've inserted, and I get the opportunity to update those views as I need to. Okay, so I can globally go through and update all of them, or just say that I want to just update this one, this ground floor plan that reflects it. I don't have to worry about the roof plan. I don't have to worry about the second floor plan. My left up and my left and right elevations aren't affected by that, just the front. And I don't have to worry about the section views. I might, so I'll just leave those. Actually, they don't. And the terrain view I don't have to worry about. And I just hit update. It updates this view and it updates my elevation view. So that's what makes them a smart view. So you can continuously update the model and change it. You'll notice the one that wasn't in the list was the rear elevation, because it was that inserted as a raster image, as a image file, and it's like a photograph. Okay, back to our drawings here. There is one more tool I want to show you, a couple tools I want to show you, and then I'll show you how to create a template. So I'm going to come in here and zoom in on our section here so we can see our bottom plate, our blocking, our top plate, and I'm going to go to the Draw tab here. The very last tool we'll see there is Details, and I'm going to add in bad insulation. Okay, so for bad insulation, I tell it where it starts, I tell it where it stops, and I show it its thickness. Left click. So 3 left clicks, and I get bad insulation in. So anytime you have to show bad insulation, rigid insulation, or show the X on a piece of wood, there's a wood section. If you need to show masonry, and if you wanted to show a cut line, we also have the roof symbol, and I'll zoom out and I'll go to our elevation views and I'll show you how to use that. So I'll zoom in on this roof right here. So when we use the roof symbol tool, we tell it what the roof type is. It's something in 12. And if I don't remember the slope of the roof, I can hit this button and show it 2 points, and it comes back and it tells me that line is on an 8 and 12 slope. And that's exactly how it's going to appear, 8.00. So I'm going to pack out the zeros and just say it's an 8 and 12. And then its alignment is on the right. I click OK, and I insert that. Okay, so that was the roof symbol that you can insert as well. Okay, so you can create that. So you can create all of your drawings. I want to devote the last 15 minutes that we have together, though, to show you how to create your own template. So I'm going to come back out here to Model Space, hit File and Save, and then I'm going to hit File and New. I want everyone to hit New, and then come here and just choose New Home Standard Construction Feet and Inches. I know there's people around the world here, so if you are working in metric, choose the millimeter one at this point, the one that best reflects you. So I'm going to do feet and inches as my example, but I know there's people from other countries. Use metric if you need to. And I hit Create. This will start a new blank drawing. And with this new blank drawing, it brings in all the settings that were saved with that drawing. What we're going to do is we're going to change those settings to be our preferred settings and then resave it as a template. So one thing that I don't ever use is the grid. So down in the lower right, I'm going to turn off the grid. So when I start off a brand new drawing, it's not going to have the grid on for me. Okay, I'm going to go up to Settings, Building Locations. Here I can change the floor level, the head height. So as an example, if you know that you're typically using 9-foot walls now, change that 9-foot 1 1/8. And then remember to change your floor level over here to be reflective that that's now 11 feet 4 5/8. Okay, and my ceiling height on the ground floor should also change to 9 feet. Okay, so I'm changing all of those. And then I'm going to come to framing options, and I'm not going to use blocking. I'm going to double click and just tell it I'm using 16 inches on center, double top plate. Okay, so I'm just making random changes here that better suit my needs. I've changed my wall height. I've changed my ceiling height. When I changed my wall height, I also had to move the second floor up a foot to be reflective of that. And I changed my type of framing that I'm using. So those are building locations information that I want to change. So I have no grid, and I've changed my building locations. I'm going to go up to Settings, Document Settings. Anything here in Document Settings is going to be saved with this template. So anything here you want to change. So as an example, units of measurement. Right now it goes down to the 16th of an inch. If you want that down to the 64th, or you want it to round up to the 1/8 of an inch, you can do that. For your dimensions, your auto exterior dimensions, pick your preferred. If you want it always to be to core, never to surface, change that now. Okay, if you dimension to either side of a window instead of to the center line of a window, change that now. How do you change your dimension, your interior? Do you always want to ignore the wall dimensions? Change that now. Anything you have that you're constantly changing here in document settings, set them up now so that when it does go through and create this, it'll always have it. And that's the same as your datum lines. If you wanted your datum line to be a dashed line always, and it to be your elevation to always show on above left, change it. And then hit Apply and OK. Now I want you to go to the drawing sheets. What here in the drawing sheets do you want it to be different? You know how to change the definition and the attributes. So if you change the definition, edit here, this is your opportunity to hit the CADSoft logo, hit delete, and then you can come up here and find an image. So if I import an image here, let me find one out on my desktop, a picture of some kind. Okay, I'm just bringing in a carpet, a piece of carpet. Okay, so I'm just bringing in a carpet. Pretend this is my logo. And I want this scale to be tremendously smaller. I'm going to say 1:1 here. And I don't want it to dim it. And I'm going to insert that here. That's my company logo. So you import an image, find a JPEG on your hard drive of your logo, bring it in at the right scale, put it in, and then remember to hit escape so it congeals it as part of your title block. Now, every single sheet that you have has that change to it. They all have your logo on it because that's part of the definition of that title block. If this title block is too large, you never print to 24 by 36. Come up here to import a Cad file. When you import a Cad file, you'll see that it automatically takes you to this dialog where I can click on title blocks, double click on title blocks. Find the size of paper that you want. So I want this is a D size piece of paper. Perhaps we need to go down to a B landscape. Okay, here's the B landscape piece of paper. Insert it. It has all of those attributes, those strings of text that change every single time you insert this title block. You can change those, click OK, and insert it. If this is the size of title block you want, you can click on this one and delete it. Okay, or you can leave it. It's in the background. If you think at some point I might print to a 24 by 36, I'll keep it. You can have it there. It's not hurting anything being there. When you go to print, you're going to print to this corner to this corner anyway. So it's going to ignore that when you print. Okay, so make all the changes to your title block. You can add sheets. Right now I have 4 sheets. I might want 5 sheets. So if I click on the site plan as an example, right click, I can say copy the view. Now it's going to take that drawing sheet, everything I had, and I've got another sheet. If I go into the view manager, that's where I can change that name. So this is going to be number 5. We'll call this electrical and click OK. So now I have 5 sheets of paper. And I have on my first sheet that alternative size of title block that I could copy to all of my sheets if I wanted to. In my model view, I've turned off the grid and I've changed my building locations information and my dimension styles. So I have everything personalized and I'm ready to save this as a template. I want you to go up to File, Save. You're going to save this in a very particular place. Click on the pull-down menu at the top. You need to save this under your C drive, under Program Data, CADSoft, Envisioneer 16, Templates. I'm going to pull this down so you can see that again. C, Program Data, CADSoft, Envisioneer 16, Templates. That's where our templates are saved. So if I give this one a name, New Fancy Template, it will have that name. Before you hit save, come down to the bottom here and you'll see options. We can give this a picture if we wanted to. So I can attach an image file. It could be any image file that I want, or it could be the last view that I had opened, which is essentially blank. Okay, so you can choose a picture to go there. And then you tell it exactly what this one is. This is a template specified in feet and inches. Its default scale is 1/4 inch equals a foot. It is wood frame construction, no blocking, 9-foot walls. So I remember what this one is. Okay. And then I just click OK. And I hit save. Now I immediately hit File, Close. I never draw anything in there. But now, when I hit File, New, there's my new fancy template. It's added to this list because I saved it in that directory, gave it a name, and you can see down here in the lower right, it's wood frame construction, no blocking 9-foot walls. So when I hit Create using my new fancy template, it will come up with a new blank drawing with no grid. And under Settings, Building Locations, I've got my new 9-foot walls and my new 9-foot ceiling. And my framing has no blocking there. And if I look at the bottom of the sheets, I've got my number 5 electrical plan. And under one floor plan, it's got both of my title blocks. So all a template is a blank drawing with nothing drawn on it, with all your preferred settings saved to it. So use one of our templates as the basis of your template, make the necessary changes that you need to, and then file and save it with our templates in the directory that I showed you, and it'll be there for all your future projects, saving you a lot of work. Because every time you start a new set of drawings, you have to change your title blocks to get rid of our logo and our name. Not if you change that template. That saves you that work from ever having to do it again. If you're always editing it to change the paper size, you don't have to do that again if you set that up in your template. And same with your building locations information. I would set up multiple templates if I was you. Get the one created, which got all of your title blocks all created nicely, save it, and then start a new template based on it, and start one with 10-foot walls, and 8-foot walls, and 9-foot walls, or slab on grade. So if you ever get a project that has different heights of walls, it's already set up, waiting for you to go. You just pick that template and go. Okay, so it'll save you time. A lot of information we covered today. I'm going to close this one down, go back out to our original file that we were working on. Now is your opportunity for questions. If anybody has any questions, please don't hesitate to ask them now about working drawings. Again, I recorded today's class. Watch it again. Use the model that I send you to do all of your work. Practice with it. Insert views, turn things off, turn things on, change the title blocks, change the logos, change the text, insert multiple types of views. It's only a sample project. It's there for you to learn with. So make sure you set that all up and practice with it. Read the book that I send you. And then you'll be able to create working drawings very quickly, very efficiently, and insert all different types of views. There doesn't seem to be any questions. I'm going to check the answers, the question pool again, just to make sure I answered everybody's questions. It looks like I did. Okay. Well, thank you for joining me all week this week. For those of you that have been here all week, I appreciate you taking the time out to learn about Envisioneer so you can use it more efficiently in your business or in your classroom. Thanks, everybody. Have a fantastic day. I'll get the materials to you as quick as I can. Bye-bye.